Hey guys, Steele here with another video presented by Razer. Today we're going to talk about Fracture and everything you need to know about Fracture in order to master the map and start playing with your enemy like you play with food. I'm going to take you to the secret parts where we learn and develop all of our plans. I'm going to take you to the lands of MS Paint. Traditionally speaking, most maps, you're going to be looking at having a B site somewhere towards the left side of the map, an A site somewhere towards the right side of the map, and then the defenders will have this rotation here between the two sites, and then they're also going to have this middle section here, which connects to A and B. And then the attackers are going to be able to attack B or A from the front side, and then they can try to overtake middle and then use that as a second entry point and use this middle to control rotations and control all of the just rotations between the two sites. Now, with Fracture, all this kind of goes out the window. On Fracture, you have B, you have A, and then you have the attackers attacking from the outsides of the map. And the defenders have a rotation through the middle here. So right here, the attackers can just straight up decide they're going to attack one of the sites and push into it. But the defenders, if you do like a traditional like 3 people at one and 2 people at the other, they're just going to get pinched either side. And that's not good. So you need to really stop thinking about Fracture as a conventional map and realize that the defenders almost have to play like attackers. Moving into my next favorite tool, Valoplant, we could easily put down a bunch of different agents that are normally found on this map. So Breach is a big one. Usually you have like a Cypher, maybe a Killjoy. Brimstone's big, Breach is big, and then usually like a KO is big. Sometimes teams will use a Fade, sometimes they'll use a Killjoy instead of a Cypher, some teams will use a Jet instead of a Raze, some teams will even use Neon on this map. Now, what you need to think about is when you go in this map, you need to think about that you can't fight on defense for 1, 2, 3, and 4 lanes because you would have one person at each. You can't fight to hold 2 sites because that means that you'll have 2 people on B and 3 people on A and vice versa. And what happens is the enemy is going to go and they're going to split through 2 different lanes, one way or the other. And now because of like the compositions that you run, while you're fighting into one direction, you're going to get split on from the other. And then the rotations here for the defenders is just going to take way too long for these guys to be able to rotate and get to B before the attackers kill the B guys. So you have to be very proactive on defense, and you have to either push things so you can flank. You should be faking that you're pushing so that the enemy might speed up into traps that you might be setting for them. And the players that are on the weak side need to know how to stall long enough so that they can live and wait for a rotation to come. If you're dying too quickly, you're doing something wrong and you need to play to live somehow better. So common things is that you would go on defense and you try to secure an area. It doesn't matter what area, just an area. So you could be trying to secure, for example, this A main control here. And then what you would do is say, if the enemies are coming up through the dish side and they're trying to come into A, but then they also want to split through A main, what you're going to do is you're actually going to fight one direction into them. You're going to deal with the split, right? You don't want to fight where everyone's on site, where, you know, Brim is maybe up here, Raze is like top site, and then like Breach is somewhere like around here. Because what this is going to do is it's going to allow the enemies to come through and try to split this way and use all these different lanes, and all these fights for the defenders are all isolated. So the Brim's by himself. Maybe he's kind of with the Breach, kind of, but you know what happens if the enemies drop a smoke? Boom, right on him. Now he has to like run through a smoke, which is not ideal. The Raze is definitely alone. So if they drop smokes like boom, 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 for example, and come out A, the Raze is alone site. If they drop smokes boom, boom, like this, Raze is alone site, Breach is alone. and they're getting isolated 1-on-1. So this is really bad. You don't want to like fall into these situations because this isn't good. The only time where you should be like in a situation like this is if the KO is like already close to you guys and the Cypher's playing to live on here, and then this is the only time where this is acceptable because you could drop a counter smoke, boom, right here, and now maybe we can KO flash through the smoke, and now we can get out and use all this space and get in front of the smokes. Now we're kind of fighting together and we have crossfire set up. But the most ideal thing is just being able to figure out where the enemy is going and then get in front of their hit. So for example, if you're going to start with this breach, raise, and brim at A thing, and then the KO and the Cypher are going to be playing B, for example, then these guys at B need to make sure they live. That's their job. Live, stall, and get a little bit of info if you can. The guys on A, however, it's their job to push through and get info and map control. Because they have 3 together, if one of them dies, there's still 2 more people. So if the enemy tries to speed up, there's still 2 people. And then what you want to do is you want to try to get the information all the way through, and you're going to take a bit of a risk. So you boombot through, you see that this is clear. Traditionally, on a lot of maps, like let's say you're playing Ascent, for example, you're not want to go push through. But with Raze on this map, or Jet, or Neon, just anybody, you have to peek this and take this deep line here. And this is going to enable 2 things. One, if the enemies do go B, you have this fast rotation into B through the flank. And then you should take one of your teammates with you, whether it be Brim, Breach, doesn't matter. And now once you have this deep line, you can rotate another guy to B through spawn, or you can have that guy just spot the other side, dish. So if the enemies do come A, this guy's like, oh hey, they're A, and now you guys can play, you have A main control, these guys come through spawn, boom boom. Now you're able to do a nice retake like you're on attack. Let's say the enemies go B, these guys push through and flank, these guys rotate, these guys are here, boom boom. Now we have a nice retake. Let's say the enemies go back to A, you just fight this. So other things that you have to think about on defense is how to fake like what you're doing. If you're going to, for example, fight B main one round and you're going to smoke like this, Brim's over here, Breach, Brim's going to push, Breach is going to do this fault line right in front of the smoke at the barrier, and then the Raze is going to swing down and he's going to fight, and then the Cypher is going to play somewhere on A, and he's got like a trip on dish side for himself, and maybe he's got like a trip on site, and then maybe he has a camera for himself that he throws into A main for info early on, and then like a cage to live or something, or maybe he's playing offsite, doesn't matter. And then the KO or Fade or whoever it is, doesn't matter who it is, just somewhere else, either helping this fight, maybe they're getting info somewhere else. If you're going to do a fight like this on defense, which is absolutely good, you fight this, you take this control, and what this does is it enables you to go through underpass. It makes it very difficult when the enemies want to come back and come back this way. They have to re-clear this. If they're trying to come up arcade into site, now they have to deal with people potentially being in spawn, at gen, at canteen. All the people in site, they have no idea if you're in tower, if you're in site, and also B main. So this is very difficult for the attackers to break through. So if the attackers decide that they want to go A, for example, boom, you already have the flank coming. You have the Raze, the Brim, whoever coming through to flank, and then these guys are all coming spawn. Boom, very strong rotation. But what you need to do is sometimes you need to fake like you're doing this. So you'll smoke this from, you know, maybe he's playing A. Maybe the Raze is playing A by here. Maybe the Cypher's playing here. You'll smoke it. You'll stun it. You'll have Cypher put like a camera to see if they're here or not, or maybe he just doesn't do anything. You're just faking like you're doing this push. When the enemy saw that you last push like this, they saw that you had 3 here, maybe they had 4 people on B, and they're like, oh, when we see this, they're pushing B, let's go A fast. They run up, and boom, they're running into 1, 2, 3 people right here, and you have a trap. You tether them, you nade them, you smoke them, you molly them. Maybe instead of this guy, you have this guy. Maybe you, instead of having Cypher, you have Killjoy, and you send them into the Killjoy's trap. Whatever the case may be, you have to feign aggression to kind of like make them go into your traps. So you need to condition the trap by actually pushing with it, conditioning the push rather, and then you have to condition this so that when you want to fake it and have the enemy run into you, when you play the mind games, the meta games, you give the same look, but you do something different off of it. Moving on to attack, you want to make sure that you are keeping in mind that there's 4 ultimate orbs potentially up for grabs. It's very difficult for the defenders to fight for every ultimate orb. And if they are going to fight for specific orbs, for example, the dish one, that's a very good fight for the attackers. If you're able to just deal with 2 to 3 defenders right here in this tiny choke point, and you don't have to break crossfires where they can be in a multitude of positions on site, that's a very good situation for you to be in. Same thing with like B main, for example. If the defenders want to peek you from site, if they want to push down B main and contest you for the orb, these are really good fights. The worst fights you could have are when you are in a position coming out through a choke point and the defenders have a multitude of positions to be playing from. This is the worst situation to be in. So you want to make sure that when you do come out in an area, you have as much map control as possible. So the first thing that you want to do is think about, are there any patterns that the enemy is doing? Are they pushing us, or are they playing very defensively? Are they trying to farm ultimate orbs? What are they doing, and how are they setting up? So usually you'll want to spread out a little bit and kind of feel things out. Maybe you send a Cypher on a mission to gather some info with a camera. Maybe he goes tree. Maybe he goes up arcade. Maybe he goes up dish, but he puts his camera to spot arcade and underpass pushes, and he's taking 2 lanes at the same time. And then you'll boombot into A main, and then you'll also come back to tree. That's you trying to spread around the map, find out what the enemy's doing, try to find out their setup, maybe get some ultimate orbs along the way, and then you can make the plan of where you want to hit together. The most ideal thing that you could do is find out where the enemy is strong. If you know that they have 3 on A and 2 on B, then what you want to do is you want to get all of your people as close to B as possible, and then you just want to slam them in B before these 3 guys from A are able to rotate through. You want to go in and you want to kill them. And the thing is, if you go into a site, let's say you're going into B site here, and then you clear everything, and the enemy's not playing anywhere in sight, and you know that they're going to be playing from spawn and from canteen, that means that they know and want you to go B because they're going to be coming at you with all sorts of grenades, aftershocks, stuns, flashes, everything. You cannot sit here and let them exec onto you like they're attackers. You can't sit in spots like slant and tower and all these like spots here. You need to get close and you need to jam them. You can't let this happen. You have to fight them. You can't get flanked by them when they're pushing all the way through A main and you guys are just sitting in spots all like one guy here, one guy here, one guy here, one guy here, like one guy here. Bad. Don't do that. You have to just pick, all right, they're not here. What's the next place we're fighting? This map is all about fighting. Where you're fighting, when you're fighting, who are you fighting with. That's all it is. Both sides, you're fighting. And if you're not fighting, that means that you are deliberately either playing your life because your teammates are fighting and you're just holding some map control and getting some info, or you're baiting and you're useless, and you don't want to do that because that's bad.